and Staudenmaier. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. To all of us, this must sound familiar, and yet not quite right. After all, everyone can remember learning about Thomas Jefferson's famous statement of the rights of all Americans to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This permeates everything we base our society on. But what many of us may not be aware of is that Thomas Jefferson adapted this phrase from the philosopher John Locke's belief in the rights of people to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Now, you may feel like we've all suddenly become history majors, and keeping in mind that Professor Tootin would be overjoyed, bear with me for a moment. Jefferson's change to Locke's original ideal embodied all the hope, beauty, and freedom the colonies offered, the beauty of the land, the hope of new opportunities, and the freedoms that we now believe to be inalienable rights. Unfortunately, as time has passed, we have chosen to forsake Jefferson's ideals and instead embrace John Locke's right to the pursuit of life, liberty, and property. And if you're anything like me, hear the words history lesson and run the other way. Though it may be hard to really admit to ourselves that all these material entrapments aren't as valuable as we first thought, isn't it now of all times, a time of recessions, bank greed, and Wall Street corruption, that it becomes a good time to realize that our pursuit has become a greedy, materialistic pursuit? And looking at the problems that this greed has caused, isn't it time we came back to the happiness promised by Jefferson and achieved through our life experiences? It is undeniably hard to admit to ourselves that our pursuit of happiness has morphed into a very different thing from Jefferson's. Yet, our love for material acquisitions has never been more obvious. In a survey conducted by St. Bartholomew's Medical College, asking people what they viewed as most important in their lives, the most frequently mentioned area was financial success. If we really choose to look, we find our addictive need for materialism everywhere. According to Experian Automotive, households owning more than 3 cars are the largest group of car owners in America. 99% of Americans own televisions. Can you imagine that? 99% of us own TVs. I know my own family has 3 sets. And don't forget those lottery tickets we all buy, hoping for instant wealth. As much as we may try to deny it, we have become addicted to the quest for wealth and are constantly pushed to acquire more. After all, every day our society tells us that Mr. and Mrs. Jones have everything we could ever want. Though material success may not seem like an entirely bad aim, the supposed happiness gained from this pursuit of property is, like the material goods themselves, transient, superficial, and above all, greedy. According to the University of Chicago, the percentage of people who consider themselves happy has decreased by 4% since 1957, when the average income was only $10,000. Think about that. We have more money, but we're less happy. Even in situations that we may consider the ideal dream come true, unhappiness lurks in the undercurrents. Psychologists interviewed major lottery winners and learned that the joy of sudden wealth disappeared in only a few months. In addition, the winners had a hard time finding enjoyment in everyday activities like talking with friends. As Arthur Brooks, a professor at Syracuse University, said, "It's as if the overwhelming wealth dulls the enjoyable flavors of life." And the underlying implications of such a pursuit are not always so seemingly innocuous. The greed of U.S. banks has led to the worst recession in decades and could lead to upward of a $12.2 trillion debt through the Troubled Asset Relief Program. To put that huge number in perspective, that's enough to give you, me, and every other American more than $36,000 each. Perhaps most disturbing, a study published in the Journal of Economic Psychology argued that higher income is associated with higher suicide rates. I don't know about you, but to me, no amount of money is worth that price. Though we may relate money with happiness, this is not necessarily the case, or even what Jefferson meant. We must recognize this and come back to pursue what Jefferson idealized. A study performed by Cornell University found that life experiences made people happier than material possessions. And if that isn't enough to call us away from material goods and back towards happiness, consider this. Nigeria, Mexico, and Venezuela ranked highest out of all countries in happiness levels, while the US was only listed at 16th. Yet, in gross domestic product rankings, Mexico, Venezuela, and Nigeria ranked far below the United States, which was listed at number 1. Think about that. The United States has the highest standard of living, and yet 15 countries, most of them war-torn and impoverished, are happier than us. So why don't we step away from the cars, the toys, and the money for a moment, and reinvigorate Jefferson's belief on how to really cultivate happiness. In our short time together, I hope I have convinced you that money cannot buy happiness. Jefferson saw a potential in our nation that existed nowhere else, and we too must, like the great leaders we revere, like Martin Luther King, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Jefferson himself, seek and recognize the happiness that the ideals of America promise. Charles Kingsley once said, "We act as though comfort and luxury were the chief requirements in life, when all we need to really make us happy is something to be enthusiastic about." So let us step back from our tireless pursuit of property. Let us retire John Locke to the bookshelf, and let us remember what the pursuit of happiness has gained for us so far, a nation founded on the ideals of freedom, equality, and love. Though fast cars and fancy toys may have their appeal, it is fleeting and comes with a price tag that is too high. On one of my 3 TVs, I once heard a Lexus ad brag that whoever said money can't buy happiness isn't spending it right. But to that I must say, a hug from a loved one, the friendships formed here at Juniata and beyond, and the hope that our country promises us are much sweeter than what something like a Lexus can give. And the last time I checked, about $35,000 cheaper.